Hey nerds, Farmer Jesse here. Welcome to Growers Daily, your daily dose of ecological farming insight. It is Tuesday, October 21st, 2025, and today we are talking about the mighty beaver, finally, how we could make ourselves beaver-like and improving our sweet corn and other seed germination when we seed them. Those all go together pretty well. Anyway, let's do it. All right, everyone. Welcome to Tilth Tuesday. Every Tuesday this year will be brought to you by our friends at Tilth Soil, and it's officially pre-sale season for 2026. So check out tilthsoil.com/farmers to get a pretty sweet deal on potting mix for the next season. Link will be in the show notes. I hope your weeks are off to a good start. Ours has been relatively laid back so far because it was almost frosty yesterday morning, and I'm slow when it's cold, especially these first colds. But I did start on my strawberry project, so that's something. Got my fresh sheet done and sent out, so that's also something. All the normal stuff. Then I felt a little listless last night without soccer in my life. It always comes to like a screeching halt, and frankly, I'm not a fan of screeching halts. I need a slower ease out of my daily habits, but I suppose one of these days I will learn the art of slowing down and be like, oh, rest. This is rest. But that may or may not ever happen. Anyway, and Stinky Pigs FC, which will only make sense to Stinky Pigs FC. Give us a shout at no-tillgrowers.com. You know what this is about, but also I don't have your contact info. Yep. Congrats. Anyway, I have been threatening to do a beaver episode for a long while, and although I'm not going to do a whole episode today on beavers necessarily, I mean, it's a farming show, so I guess I have to have some farming technical stuff in there somewhere, but I am going to do the first and third segments on this subject. And you may be like, why of all creatures the beaver? Well, first let's talk about some of the interesting qualities of the beaver, and then, although in many ways they are fascinating without a bigger point attached, we will attach a bigger point to bringing up the beaver. Okay, so when I was a kid, I went to, I think we took like some sort of school field trip or something to Estes Park, Colorado, and got to see my first beaver dam, and I was hooked. This beaver had chopped down some nearby aspens and built not only a dam, but an entire pond in a place not really known for water. I remember, though, to be fair, that it felt like walking to an oasis in that dry climate, seeing all the plants and trees and water and birds. And it turns out beavers can kind of do that to places, create ecological oases where once before there was just kind of like a trickle of water. They do so by using sticks and branches and rocks and trees, leaves, muds, bones in some cases, whatever they can find that makes sense, and slowly start constructing dams to block that water. Very, very fascinating dams, in fact, that their whole architecture is not only super interesting with drainage, but also varies by where they are. So anyway, maybe that's for a different segment, one that I would happily nerd out on. But anyway, once the water is blocked, it slowly starts to fill out a small pond. But the beavers are also digging deep channels in the pond and beneath the pond, sometimes between ponds, that allows for deeper penetration of water and better water retention in things like droughts and also fire resistance and forest fires. That one is really fascinating to me. Indeed, beaver dams help protect not just the beavers themselves and their dams because they're surrounded by water, but also the surrounding vegetation from fires. It has a whole protection area around the pond that is like much bigger than you'd think it is. Now, beavers can build their dams quite rapidly too, like overnight, even when they are dismantled, thanks in large part to the iron they have in their teeth that gives them their kind of orange color and to their high work rate. They are also considered pests for that reason. Beaver ponds have been known to flood fields and neighborhoods and cause floods on roads and such, but they have also been known to dramatically improve the biodiversity of a region, both on the macro and micro side. That would be like bugs, aquatic life, terrestrial life, microbial life, all the things. And even when the ponds break, the enriched area continues to thrive for many years. The thing is, beavers are also known for their pelts, or at least they were, before European colonization, having all but wiped out their own beaver populations in Europe. Europeans arrived in America to find, it is estimated, hundreds of millions of beavers. Dr. Glennis Hood said in one talk that between 1769 and 1868, over 4.7 million beaver pelts were sold in London alone. So just London. And so you can imagine how the near extinction of beavers changed the American landscape from a wet, abundant place to a much drier, harsher, less biodiverse one with less protections from drought and wildfires, over the course of just like a couple hundred years. And I've said this before, but humans and beavers are two creatures who change their environments more than any others. But the difference is how they do that. It used to be that humans were more like beavers, leaving in the wake of, like fire management, hunting, agroforestry, etc., all the things that indigenous populations in America and elsewhere have done. This activity would leave more life behind, not less. So I often hold the beaver up as an example of what our impacts could be or can be, of how changing an environment doesn't have to necessarily like degrade it. It can actually improve it. And you might say, well, that's all well and good, but beavers cause a lot of issues for humans. And yes, they do, because human culture is not designed to live in conjunction with beavers or really any other animal as it once was. Some indigenous tribes consider beavers to be the creators of the universe, and pre-colonization lived somewhat harmoniously with them. We, by contrast, harvested almost all of them and then built houses and roads and farms in floodplains and then complain when beavers do beaver things. So anyway, I guess this first segment, possibly of many on beavers, I'm just saying that there was a time we lived more like beavers, and beavers lived abundantly, and the ecology around us thrived for it. So in the third segment, we'll discuss, maybe some potential simple changes could be made to bring even a small percentage of that world back. But what say you all? Are there creatures you take particular inspiration from, the way that I take inspiration from, the mighty beaver? Or are there other beaver facts that you really like? Because there's lots of good beaver facts out there that I do not have the time to get to today, but probably will at another point. Otherwise, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we will talk about sowing sweet corn and other crops to be more consistent on their germination, as is the natural intermezzo for this particular subject. BRB. Today's episode is brought to you by Farmhand. Renewal season is here, and the work you put in now is what brings members back next year. Ari Memar, founder of Farmhand and a guest you've heard on this podcast, has worked with regenerative farmers to create a playbook that turns renewal season into a growth season. One farmer, Melanie at Shake Fork Community Farm, brought in $40,000 in renewals in just 2 weeks using this strategy. Now, Ari and Melanie are sharing the exact approach in a free live workshop and downloadable playbook. Watch on demand and get the playbook at farmhand.partners/no-till. That's farmhand.partners/no-till. All right, back to the show. If you, the listener or viewer, are enjoying this podcast, getting even a small amount of value from it, consider supporting our work over at patreon.com/no-till-growers. I will try to get to questions from everywhere that questions come in, but I will always get to your Patreon questions. Now, today's Patreon question comes to us from Patreon member Steve Broad, who asks, quote, "Hey Jesse, been watching your YouTube videos for a year and have learned an amazing amount. Finally joined to support you and ask questions. Thanks. Questions for next year's planting. How do you plant sweet corn? I've tried Jang and Haas seeders, but they are too inconsistent. Thanks." End quote. All right. Thanks, Steve. Good question here. And I can honestly go beyond just sweet corn. But for starters, I will tackle the sweet corn because this can be a difficult crop in some ways to get good germination, but it isn't always the seeder's fault. The thing is with sweet corn is that it is simply delectable, especially right after it sprouts, but even before that, really through its entire life. Loads of creatures will find their way to the freshly seeded rows and hammer the sweet corn seeds within a few hours. Moles, voles, mice, squirrels, again, delectable. Then once they have germed, birds will peck them out one by one and eat the sweet germ, thus the advent of the scarecrow. And then also, of course, deer will just munch on the greens, and then raccoons will get the sweet corn. So assuming that you have sowed it well, protecting it from critters is essential to good germination. My method for this is to simply put row cover over top of the beds until the germs are, like a couple inches tall. This both increases germination and protects the young seeds and sprouts from at least some critters. I also do like priming sweet corn seed, meaning I will soak it overnight in compost extract and allow it to dry a bit before sowing it. It can stay in that dried state for like 6-ish months too. So you can actually do this priming early on in the season, and it works for many different crops, from peas to beans to spinach and so on, just kind of emulating what it would do in nature, where it drops to the ground, it gets wet, it gets cold, it gets wet, it gets cold. And then when the temperature's its ideal conditions, then they germinate. Now as for the cedar itself, it's good to check that it's dropping the seeds well every 10 or so feet to make sure they're falling uniform. Just look at where the seeds are dropping and make sure they are actually coming out at a decent pace. For sweet corn, I'm usually using the earthway with the sweet corn plate, and I'm making sure the shoot is clear of spider webs before sowing. But the jang should work just as well. Same with the Haas. The depth of the cedar will make a big difference too. If it's too shallow, they won't germinate well, and obviously critters will more easily find them. If it's too deep, same sort of thing. They just won't germinate quite as well. Sweet corn really likes it at around an inch deep or so. Just make sure your shoe is set low enough in that instance. I also really recommend good watering in of the seeds to speed up the germination process as much as possible. The longer those seeds kind of sit in the ground, or any seeds really, the longer they sit there, the more susceptible they will be to failure, either from drying out or from getting eaten or whatever it may be. Also, make sure the temperatures are adequate for germination. Sweet corn really likes it in that 80 to 87 degree range. That's 26 to 30 degrees Celsius. So although there are crops that I might recommend a better cedar, you should be able to get a good stand of sweet corn from either of those cedars. The jang in general will give you the more uniform or singulated, as we say in farming, which I don't really think is a word, seed drop, but you still have to meet all those other conditions. And I would think it would be better than the Haas, but you should be able to get good germination with either of those. So I hope there was something helpful in that. Otherwise, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we will get back to talking about the creature we could be based on a creature that is mystery. You're just going to have to guess what it's about. It's about beavers. Be right back.
Farmer Claire Coleman here from the Winter Growers Podcast. Did you know that I also founded Real Farmer Care, a nonprofit that supports farmer well-being? From my own experiences farming, I knew firsthand that this type of support was missing from ag, so I decided to do something about it. As of today, there are over 500 farmer recipients of a $100 self-care award, with more applying daily. If you'd like to help, each $100 donated supports one new farmer. Visit realfarmercare.com to donate and learn more. Again, that's realfarmercare.com.
All right, so in the first segment, obviously, I introduced you to what I love about beavers, in particular, their ability to multiply the biodiversity, soil health, and land resilience around them in structures, in the dam structures that they build, DAM. Anyway, and so this segment, I thought I would talk about some of the ways humans could both support and emulate the same idea. On the support side, I should say there are several really cool restoration projects for beavers out there, though one of the biggest obstacles they face is that the expense is pretty high for these projects and for like pre and post project monitoring. So oftentimes just being more expensive than the actual reintroduction part of it. So the first thing we need is just more funding for properly executed and monitored beaver reintroduction restoration projects, also referred to as Leave It to Beavers, or it should be. That way we can learn how to make these projects the most effective that they can be by just having more data. For humans, where and what we build is a good place to start, for this sort of emulation element. For neighborhoods, we often settle these in old farmland or old forests, and the ecology just disappears. We create giant swaths of land where pretty much only humans can and do live. I'm not an architect and am not aware of all the different ideas floating around for proper ecological architecture, though please feel free to enlighten us in the comment section on your ideas or things you've seen. But I'd love to see more than just humans living in neighborhoods. Farms with animals and vegetables, yes, but can neighborhoods be built in such a way that enriches the environment around them instead of, degrades it and eliminates so much of that ecology? Maybe it's leaving lots, like specific housing lots, to be managed for ecology, or maybe it's more ambitious than that, with the housing itself built to intentionally support some diverse amount of wildlife and resilience against fires, wind, etc. This show is obviously one that talks about the ways in which agriculture could do that, where and how we grow our food should have ecological reverberations out into the environment, enriching it, bringing more water, not just, using it up, bringing more wildlife, not just sterilizing it, etc. And obviously, we have those things. We have things like agri-hoods, which I think are important, but they tend to be relegated only to those who can afford to live in them, and they generally ain't cheap. These sorts of neighborhoods need to be, every neighborhood. Moving on from construction, I think the reintroduction of fire would be amazing for our landscapes. But as we've discussed before, there are a lot of complications with that in terms of, controlling controlled burns, part of which is, as a society, we are not set up to handle fires, which would have to change. I certainly do not have all the ideas for what living more like beavers would look like, but there are many, many ecologists and architects and farmers out there who are doing amazing work and probably do have more scalable ideas, and always feel free to let us know about those. I'm definitely fascinated in the big idea stuff. But I think if I emphasize anything from this particular episode, it's that beavers are a creature that cause some pretty significant disruptions to their environment. No doubt about that, but whose significant disruptions are ultimately beneficial. That was us not that long ago, and could be us again in a more modern sense, a more calculated sense. We are going to disturb this world. Absolutely, it's unavoidable. But as it is with soil disturbance, proper disturbance doesn't have to be a bad thing. It's all in how you disturb the world that matters. Thoughtful ecological disturbances. Anyway, what say you all? What are the realistic human projects where you see us being more beaver-like? Otherwise, I think that's it for now on Beavers and Cedars and on Till Tuesdays. Don't forget, No Till Growers is now officially a nonprofit 501c3, so donations are tax deductible and greatly appreciated. Please make sure to like and subscribe and or follow wherever you're getting this podcast. That's an easy way to help us out as well. Enormous thank you to all of our show sponsors, and if you'd ever like to sponsor this show, you can reach out to Farmer Michelle at notillgrowers.com. Huge shouts to Willie Breeding for the theme music, and Mike Hilbert for the production help and editing and chasing down a bunch of beaver photos and video, no doubt. Not always an easy thing to do. Also, shouts to Epidemic Sound for the background music that you can hear. Pick up a hat or a copy of my book, The Living Soil Handbook, at notillgrowers.com to support our work. Big thank you to everyone over at patreon.com/notillgrowers, where at a certain level, or if you just bump up from one level to another, or you sign up in the month of October, you get a big shout out on the show. So big shout outs today to no new signups for Monday. So I guess make sure to hop on that Patreon page and sign up if you want to continue the story of the podcaster who now will have max 2 days to solve a mystery. I mean, maybe just sign up to see if I can pull that off. Anyway, we'll see. Thanks for watching and or listening. Appreciate each and every one of you all. Have a great rest of your Till Tuesday. Bye.